Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.
Let's make sure that we get a design, we get it right for the community, not just the community in Riverside, which they're the primary concern because they live and breathe it every day, but the whole community, right? So one of the principles that we brought forward was this idea of trying to link our multi-use trails network. And that was really implementing that multi-use trail is really sort of that defining feature for this road. We've got some challenges with regard to safety on that road. And so how we tackle safety and integrate a multi-use trail, which is part of what we've been trying to do for the community for a number of years now. So we've been listening to the public.
This episode of Bring Back the Porch brought to you by Bernie Leahy, River Street Realty. Let's get you home. And I'm very pleased to welcome to the porch for today's episode Pat Bohan, who's the Managing Director of Development and Infrastructure with the City of Medicine Hat. Welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be part of your show today.
Well, I'm glad that you're here because you've been the focus point of one of the projects that seems to be taking a lot of heat in the city right now. We'll get to that in a moment, but just wanted to introduce you to the people who are listening and watching, how you came to work for the City of Medicine Hat.
Well, it's a bit of a circuitous route there, Brian. Thank you for inviting me to come and speak on behalf of the city here today. I started with the city in September of 2020, just in the gut of COVID. Yes, I see that face you're making right there. And I came aboard as I was recruited by Brad Maines, who was the managing director of environment and energy and infrastructure back in those days, as I was doing some consulting after being at NMAX, the power company in Calgary, for about 8 years.
Okay, so you came here and you started in...
I was in the environmental utilities group, so that was taking care of the water and wastewater treatment, the distribution of water, collection of sanitary waste, and of course the landfill and solid waste collection. Yeah,
the arteries that keep our city going.
That's exactly right. The underground utilities that nobody knows much about is, unless they're not performing.
When they break, we know about it.
We sure do. Don't we?
So then you became the Managing Director of Development and Infrastructure in 2023?
Yep. About just coming up on 3 years ago.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned that project that seems to be all the buzz on social media and everywhere, the Riverside corridor.
Yes.
Yeah. I took the survey yesterday myself. I wanted to see what all the kerfuffle was about, and I didn't see anything there that really ruffled my feathers. Some of the optics might look a little bit, when you do the flyby, it kind of looks like, ooh, that might be a pinch point, but until you actually, I guess, drive it, you don't really know. But you have been taking public feedback on that survey, and you've also had a couple of open houses down in the Riverside neighborhood. How has it gone? How has anything changed since they started this process? Yeah,
well, Brian, I think let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine
to
turn the dials. And
Mr. Peabody.
Yes, that's right. So let's talk a little bit about how we got to this place and kind of we got to where we are. So a couple of years ago, we put in place a plans. We went to council. We went to the people in the local vicinity in the Division Avenue South on the southwest hill. And so we had positive feedback from both council and both the community to go forward with that. Well, fast forward to when we brought forward the transportation master plan and we brought the initial conceptual design for 3rd Street North. So we had a confluence of change, a confluence of different ideas, and implementing some of the things that we'd actually already put in place in places like North Railway and other parts of the city out in the flats. So nothing new. It was all brought in, I think, at a time when folks were really feeling a little pinched around change and adapting to these things. And boy, did we take it on the chin, and we sure learned our lesson after going to the Big Marble to bring forward the conceptual design for 3rd Street North, and we missed that one bad, and so we had a lot of the art of what's possible. Unfortunately, there was way too much art and not enough practicality. So we took that feedback from the community, from council. They advised us to go back to the community and let's make sure that we get a design, we get it right for the community, not just the community in Riverside, which they're the primary concern because they live and breathe it every day, but the whole community, right? So one of the principles that we brought forward was this idea of trying to link our multi-use trails network, and that was really implementing that multi-use trail is really sort of that defining feature for this road. We've got some challenges with regard to safety on that road, and so how we tackle safety and integrate a multi-use trail, which is part of what we've been trying to do for the community for a number of years now. So we've been listening to the public, and we've been out. We've had open houses. We've got this survey. We really want to know what it is that people like and don't like.
And so what have they been telling you they don't like?
So let's start with I'm the kind of guy that starts with what they like.
Okay.
So they like the idea that we're going to provide a safe corridor for all users of the road. So that's good.
That's good.
Many of the folks like the idea that we've got a multi-use trail that will enable users of basically all types of transportation modalities, that they can actually transact in the city and still move around. What we found they don't like is to put the multi-use trail in, we don't have enough room without
shortening.
Narrowing or reducing the lane width. Now, best engineering practices suggest that we can do that and still provide for the ease of movement and traffic. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. One of the things I think we're contemplating in this, and not only in reducing the number of curb extensions, which is that art that I was talking about earlier, we've already brought forward in our 50% design, like reduction. I'm going to get this wrong, but it's in the neighborhood of 30 or 35 less or fewer of those curb extensions that we brought forward.
I think as I was reading there that they have, I guess, reduced the curvature so that the big problem of trying to get a bus or a fire truck or an RV around the corners is easier than perhaps what we've seen on Division Avenue.
Yeah, and so what we did is we brought the folks from the fire department. We brought some of our operators. Could we have done more? We always could do more, Brian. Let me tell you, we're sure learning this as we go. That it is not a cookie cutter kind of engagement on these things. Everyone, we've got to adapt. Every time we have a meeting, we say, okay, well, we're going to bring in the garbage truck drivers, or we're going to bring in the folks that actually operate the graders and the trucks. And the reality is that it's an evolution, not a revolution on this thing.
What did we learn from Division Avenue?
Well, we learned a couple of things. We learned that the curb extensions on the streets, in this case, in the case of Riverside, it's the avenues, but we've got, and I'll use the swirls example, we've got those curb extensions that really shorten the distance for pedestrians to walk across 4th Street Southwest, we'll say. putting those in place, that really having a combination of the curb extension on 4th Street, on both north and south sides of the street, plus the curb extension on Division Avenue, that does create some tight radii for turning. So that's something we learned. We took all of those avenue based on the Riverside design out.
When was the public, consulted on Division Avenue? Was that during COVID?
Yeah, so
did that kind of, because people couldn't get out?
So this is really interesting. The level of public engagement prior to COVID, and that was pretty limited. It was limited to basically the people that were going to be directly impacted, meaning the people whose couldn't access their house from one side of the road or the other. So back pre-COVID, public engagement was very cursory, very, very limited. We realized going into COVID that, look, we have a duty to communicate to the community what it is we're going to do. So we took extra steps. Now, we didn't do a citywide engagement. We didn't do door knocking or public, open houses when we did Division Avenue, because we had never done that. And so what we did do is we had a big poster and we left it on Division Avenue right in front of the Safeway for over a year, and thinking that, this is going to be great. We're going to notify the public. We're going to do something we hadn't done before. We're going to let people know. And clearly it was not enough, Brian. Yeah. So we're learning as we go here how we can best. I right now, honestly, I cannot tell you how it is we're going to satisfy the public need. How much more do we need to do?
I'm always mindful when we talk about public consultation of the old saying that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. You need to get too many ideas maybe sometimes, and it's hard to boil them down to what will pass muster for the majority of people.
I need to qualify something for you, Brian, and that is that we really respect. We're trying to do the best we can, and our staff have. They're not out here with some evil plan to create the demise. I've read it too, and as you know, and it's just it's patently unfair that people doing their job and doing it to the best of their ability with extensive credentials that they take this. So that part, that's not right. That these folks are doing the right thing, but based on what they their education and their experience, and where we're getting it wrong is that we're not really doing as much as we could do to at least talk to the residents. I think where we really failed, Brian, is in getting deep into the why behind why are you even in Riverside working on the roads or contemplating working on the roads.
And that goes back to what we were talking about before, the underground services. Lots of calls for service there, so got to fix things.
No, and that's part of our challenge is that we try to integrate the development or the reconstruction of roads in alignment with the deep utility replacement. What we don't want to do is spend a bunch of money upgrading a road only to find out in 3 or 4 years that, oops, now our water and sewer needs to be fixed, so we got to tear up that beautiful road we just built. Yeah.
I'm glad that you stood up for the people who work at City Hall, because I always feel sorry for them when I read those hurtful comments, because keyboard warriors in their basement, they have an agenda, and it's unfortunate that people that work at the city have to absorb that. So I'm glad that you stuck up for them.
If I can just comment on that, Brian, thank you for that, and that's very much appreciated. I don't want to diminish the value that people have, or the rights that people have to have express their opinion. I know you feel that we're doing it right now, right? And so I just think that the personal piece is the hard part, right? Like, sure, City Hall can always be better, and there's, we can always do a better job. But thank you for that.
You have made some changes since, I guess, the first public consultation. You took a roundabout out.
Yes. In addition to removing 35-ish of those curb extensions, we took the traffic circle or roundabout on the northeast corner on 3rd Street behind the St. Patrick's Church. We took that out. Again, we really tried to soften sort of the change that was going forward. So.
Okay. We have a 50% design survey, so we're halfway there?
Yeah. Right now, this was really what we did is we took the perspective from both the public engagement we did last fall, summer, from the Big Marble. Plus, we've had open comment on the shapeyourcity.medicinehat.ca website. So we've taken all of that feedback and really stripped back the design to some bare principles. Now, though it's 50%, it does not mean that everything that you see in there is going to be in there. We're genuinely taking this feedback, the survey results, and we're genuinely trying to make some changes that will be acceptable to the community.
We had Councillor Bill Cox in for a visit recently, and he pointed out something that I really hadn't considered, but Division Avenue, you only have a few homes that actually face onto Division Avenue. They're mostly on the side. Riverside, 3rd Street, that's a totally different animal. Everybody backs in and out of their driveways or parks in front of their homes, and that changes things.
Yeah, it does, and that was part of our design. First of all, the change from you mentioned the changes coming from our conceptual design to the 50% design. The other couple of items I think are worthy of note is we're not taking out any trees that aren't diseased. We'll be replacing trees if they need to be taken out and replaced. So we're going to do that, and we're trying to really make We've taken out no parking, so there's going to be continued same number of parking spaces for folks in the community. We haven't removed a lane or an unused lane, as you pointed out on Division Avenue. Those side lanes, those half lanes that we saw on Division, were never used for parking or for driving. So the sense was, and again, there was no residential parking taking place there. The sense was from the team that this would be not missed. Wrong.
The buzzer.
Correct.
So now you mentioned going door to door. Has that been done, or is that being done on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, we're really trying to get the perspectives of the folks in the community. Yeah, we've got a couple of teams of folks that are out doing door knocking during daylight hours, and they're getting just making sure the folks know that there is a survey, how they can contribute. We're looking for their feedback, what their biggest concerns are, and we're just taking it to the people.
Yeah. One of the hardest choices I had to make when I was doing the survey was brick path versus grass and a boulevard. And that one I'm not sure I know. Yeah. I'm so used to having grass and stuff, but then that is incumbent on the homeowner to look after.
There's two things. Owner. Yeah, so maintenance, yes, is property owner, but irrigation, it's super expensive in this town. Yeah. The cheaper way for us to keep the burden off the taxpayer is to put in something that is aesthetically pleasing, that matches. I mean, back, as I mentioned, in North Railway, that's the same, and in the flats over by the Finer Center. Yep. When we put in those curb extensions out there, when we put in some of that stamped concrete, we are trying to keep a consistent perspective across the whole city.
When will we start seeing shovels in the ground?
Well, we made a commitment. This has been budgeted. It's approved. So the previous council, basically coming up on 2.5 years ago, approved the capital budget for this project. Normally, that would be the trigger for the design department and our municipal works department. They would go and do their design, and off they'd go. We typically would design over one winter season. with construction. We tender in the spring, and we normally go forward. What we're doing on this particular one is we're going to take all this feedback. We committed to council. We're going to gather all this feedback. We're going to give them a synthesized view of what it is we heard. Then we're going to provide council with yet another layer of decision. So they will decide. We're aiming for that this fall. The intent is that council will, and again, we're the creatures of the council. The council tells us what they want. So we hope to have that in front of council for decision late summer, early fall, like soon. And then that would trigger us to go to final design with construction in May of 2027.
You mentioned the road width, that it might have to be narrowed a little bit, but I think in the what I saw online, you sort of compared to what we have now on 20th Street North, East, and West.
Yes. That's what the design will, the width of the road. That's how it will feel if this 50% design moves forward. If the multi-use trail continues, that's the feel. So if your listeners are out and about in the north of the river and they wanted to get a sense of what's it going to be like to move around, that 20th Street Northeast, I think, is probably the best.
Okay, what's underneath that has to be fixed?
So this one is a very interesting one, Brian. The deep utilities, so water and sewer, they range in age from 1970 to 1980s, right? And some newer, some older, and across that whole stretch. So they've probably got 6 to 7 years of life left. The road has no life left. It needs to be road rehabbed. We can no longer do just that surface. Pardon me.
Dig it up.
We have to go right down to the road bed and replace the road. So what we don't want to do is do the road now and in 6 or 7 years tear it all up to put in the deep utilities. So we're at a bit of a conundrum of timing. So
timing is another factor too, because you have businesses there that need to be open. They need to have access to their customers. So staging the project is over 3 years, 4 years.
It's going to take us 3 years probably to do it. It's funny that you mentioned that. I hope you don't mind me taking a little riff on that. When you mentioned the businesses, we met with I met with most of the businesses down along 3rd Street, and those are folks that don't get up every morning and go to work or go off and away. They are on 3rd Street, and they've identified some. I mentioned to you earlier about the criticality of letting the public know why, and safety and speeds and sight lines on that road are of real critical nature. And those businesses, to a business, have identified sight lines and speeding as two really problematic areas in those businesses. We also communicated to them that we're going to take steps to make sure that when we do construction, that their customers and for the folks over at St. Joseph's, that their very critical service organizations can still have access to their business. Its business will remain open.
I said this to Councillor Cox the other day, but it strikes me that what are, I guess, traffic calming measures riled up a lot of people, but the public engagement is good, one way or the other. Yes, it's
calm on one side, not calm on the other. And again, I don't know that we did as good a job explaining what our concerns were. So we are taking all of that public feedback into account when we move forward with new road design.
Let's change gears a little bit. Sure. People have seen what happened in Calgary with the Bears Paw Reservoir feeder, where they lost the capacity to provide service for a lot of people in Calgary, and people in Medicine are going, well, we've got old pipes here too. How are we doing there? I know we looked after 3rd Street because we had that project for a number of summers. But what about the rest of the city, the older areas? How are we there?
Thanks for that question, Brian. We spend a lot of time talking about that. In particular, the fact that Calgary had a second problem in the end of December of last year. We've, how can I say this? About 5 years ago, so just after I started here with the city, I asked our design teams at environmental utilities to give me a list of critical infrastructures and single points of failure. So they produced that list for me, and I'm not an engineer, but their job is to come to me with their problems, and I help them solve them. So my job was to raise the alert with our city council and to ensure that we've highlighted the criticality of getting some of that critical infrastructure and those single points of failure addressed. So we've got a list of those single points of failure. And if you're with a little bit of latitude from you, I'll tell you a little story actually, and it came up very timely. So. We have design folks, and I'm using the word design interchangeably with engineering teams. So, and I have so much respect for our teams. And Medicine Hatters should be very, very proud of our design and engineering teams across the city, and everything from parks to our gas and electric business to water and sewer and roads. Like we are punching way above our weight class. We've got just an outstanding team. So what happened is we identified about 4 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we identified the first project that we were going to tackle that identified a single point of failure and critical infrastructure. There was a little video that we did for a pipe component down in the Kipling and Dottie Avenue where Cemetery Hill meet. There's a single pipe that comes down the Ajax Coulee, and that's that little hidden
nobody knows
trail.
about.
Yeah, it's wonderful, right? Yeah. We identified that asbestos concrete pipe as a critical single point of failure. So we came up with an initial budgeted estimate what it would cost to twin that concrete pipe. And we brought that forward to council, and council approved it. They approved us to go forward. Well, fast forward to the point where we're starting to get ready to go into detailed design, and a couple of very enterprising young engineering staff at our environmental utilities group said, wait a minute, there's a adjacent gas main that's right near this pipe, and if we're contemplating putting in a second pipe adjacent to the existing one, that construction work, the vibration, the risk near the high pressure gas main, this was going to be a real challenging project. So these enterprising engineers on our environmental utilities team, now this is not outside contractors, this is born and bred, homegrown, smart guys and girls, right? That at the city, they said, "Well, wait a minute. Our director just came back from a conference that talked about water main lining." Now we've been doing sewer main lining for years. This is where we would put in a polymer lining on a sewer pipe so we didn't have to dig it up. We can insert this thing and we can extend the life of our sewer lines. So what this enterprising team did is they identified a abandoned 1912 steel pipe that's coming down the hill from a different direction up by the church at the top of Cemetery Hill. They identified that as a pipe it's been long abandoned. So it was basically wasted. It's in the ground. They determined that, hey, we can line this. So we are going to use that abandoned line. We're going to line that pipe and bring that down straight down the Cemetery Hill to connect into and I'm simplifying this, connect into that Kipling booster station that's at the bottom of the hill. And we're going to save so much money by not buying pipe, doing a big dig, and disrupting the public. We're going to save enough money to line the first pipe the one that's already there. So the beauty of that is that we're going to be able to extend the pipe that's coming down the Ajax coulee today, the single point of failure. We're going to be able to line that, give it brand new life, maybe 70 years, and we're going to relight the old steel pipe. And it's coming from a different direction, so that gives us even more security. And we're going to be able to do it, we hope, at considerably lower price.
And when does that project start?
We're kicking that off this year. So we're just doing the final sort of staging and design work, and we hope to get that going here right away.
Okay. I was always curious. Some of our city history, they talk about some of the early water pipes, and they used wood, old tree trunks, I guess, just haul it out. Do we still have any of that left?
Not that we know of. And when we did the First Street water main upgrades about 18, 17, something like that, we found that actually that the pipes were the sewer pipes no longer existed. All there was a clay sort of mold where the pipe used to be. Oh, okay. So the sewage was still flowing properly, but it was
like
just it was like, well, it was underground. It was like 8 feet deep, but it was there was a circular thing where the pipe used to be that the sewage flowed through. And when we were replacing pipe, that's where we found this pipe. Okay. Now, the wood pipe. Now, think about, I'm going to take you way back. And maybe you've traveled a little bit in Europe and you go to these, bigger pardon?
I've never been
there.
Okay. It's on my bucket list.
You've probably seen kegs, old wooden kegs. We've got a sample, we refurbished, and we have it on display at Environmental Utilities. That's exactly what it looks like. Just wooden staves with bands that go around, just like you'd see a big cask of wine or a cask of whiskey or some other type of stored liquid. But and frankly, they work good. Yeah, they work real good. They saturate with water as long as there's liquid in them. The pipes are they've got a high integrity.
Yeah. When you look at what the Romans did with delivering water and carrying away wastewater, that was 2,000 years ago and more. And that's still working.
Yeah, it's astonishing actually. That again, all the credit goes to those smart engineers and design folks, both 2,000 years ago and even today.
Yeah, well, we're blessed to have them working for us.
We are very fortunate. And
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
Boy, I think I've just used up all the air in the room on you, Brian. I apologize for that. I get pretty passionate about this stuff. And, I think that when I say passionate, I mean, that extends to my teams. They really care about this community. They care about, most of them have been with the city a lot longer than me. Some of the folks 20 plus years, and they're still innovating. Brian, I got to tell you, it just every day is a marvel to me at our staff and how they can continue to stay resilient as our infrastructure.
In the face of things that other generations never had to face. Maybe I can just wrap with this for you, Brian, I understand. I understand folks, and they don't want to lose the character of their community. They don't want to lose what they grew up with, what their parents grew up with. And there was never an intent to take anything away from folks. It was really about trying to preserve what the community, in fact, our municipal development plan actually says that. It's about ensuring our land use bylaws. It's about ensuring that when we have a new development, that the character of the community is preserved. And I want your listeners to know that both me, City Manager Hutter, and my entire team, we're here to support the community and the residents within it. Pat Bohan, thank you for the visit.
You bet. I really appreciate it, Brian, and I wish you continued success with this, with your podcast.
Thank you.